Hey, y'all. Welcome back. You're listening to the Live with Audacity podcast, episode number 4. I'm your host, Melissa Stewart. Today, I've got an incredible story of audacity, triumph, and intuition. My good friend Kema Ward-Hopper is here to tell us about her journey in healing from breast cancer using a mix of Western medicine and naturopathic methods and taking big risks in her life to get to a place of peace and happiness. I think you're really going to love her story and be able to understand that you have one life to live and you have to do what's right for you at every turn. Let's dive in. You're listening to the Live with Audacity podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Stewart. Audacity is defined by Merriam-Webster as intrepid boldness or disregard for normal constraints. And that's exactly what we have here. The Live with Audacity podcast is aimed at giving you the courage to explore your someday dreams, do things your way, and start making things happen in your life right now. I'm a mama to 4 kiddos ranging from college student to kindergartner, wife to a high school football and track coach, and a multi-passionate entrepreneur. Together with my guests, we're going to teach you how to live with audacity and intentionality, discover and utilize your unique skills and talents, and step into who you are meant to be in order to make your someday dreams a reality. Are you ready? Here we go. So everyone, thank you so much for coming back to hear the Live with Audacity podcast. I am so excited. Today I've got Kema Ward-Hopper on the podcast, and Kema and I met in the strangest way, and I think it's so fun. But our kids together did a triathlon in Houston. They did the Houston Texans kids triathlon. It was the first one my son ever did. I know that Erilyn had done a couple before that though, right?
Yeah, but that was her first Houston Texans one. That was the biggest one for sure.
And it was so crazy because since we had never done it, we didn't know what to expect. And so we're all standing in this line, freaking out, like we're going to be late. Oh God. But everybody else was standing there in line too. So we were just trying to figure everything out. And we just kind of hooked up together and we're buddies for the whole day. And we had so much fun just talking and getting to know each other. And you guys, I have loved following your story ever since. So I'm going to turn it over to you so you can kind of tell us a little bit about your family and how you guys got to where y'all are at right now.
Okay. So, well, my daughter Erilyn was who did the triathlon with your son, and she's 10 now. And going to school here in Costa Rica. We live in Costa Rica. We moved away from Houston July 5th of last year. So we're approaching our 1-year anniversary of living abroad.
So
and
wild.
Go ahead. Oh yeah.
So wild. Yeah. So cool.
Sometimes I still can't believe, that we live here. And then I can never imagine going back. Like this feels like it was home all along, and I've just been wandering, and now I'm back home living in the jungle.
I could totally see that for you. It just seems like your place and seems like it just really fits your personality the best.
It does. And Nick as well. My husband, Nicholas, he also, I'm so glad, like it's so important to find a partner that aligns with your vision and your goals for your life. And he's on par with me. He cannot imagine going back to live in the United States. Of course, we go back often because all of our family is there. But when we come back after visiting, even though the visit may have been great, we're always just like, oh, finally, we're back.
Right? And back to relaxation and slowing down. Oh, man. I bet it's so great.
Yes, it is. And so what led us to this was actually a series of unfortunate events, literally. It all started with, in September 2015, my dog died, and people might be thinking, oh, your dog died. But no, this dog was my first baby, and he had been with me since he was 8 weeks old. And he was 10 when he got sick. He had cancer and passed. And so I took it really, really hard. And I didn't realize that this was a part of the story until recently, when I asked Erilyn, because we had watched something about health and the reasons that people get cancer. And so I think I had asked a question just kind of vaguely out loud. What was I doing? What was going on when we found out I had cancer? And Erilyn said, you were grieving Poppy. Poppy was our
Oh,
dog's name. And Nick looked at me like, oh, wow. Like, I wonder if, because I think it was unnatural. Like, you're sad for a couple of weeks, but I was sad for months.
wow.
And so that was in September. In December of 2015, Nick proposed, and we planned to get married the next year in July in Costa Rica. That's where our Costa Rican adventure started, was our wedding.
Awesome.
And so in planning the wedding, we had already planned out most of it by the time on my birthday, March 16th, 2016, I found a lump. And it was like, we had been out celebrating. So I'd had, probably 2 glasses of wine too many. And I was standing in the mirror, and I was like, honey, something's wrong. He's like, babe, you're just drunk.
Yeah, right?
He's like, you're just drunk. And so I was like, okay, maybe you're right. So we go to sleep, and the next day he goes, I just want to remind you that you were really concerned about, something that you found on your breast. And so I looked again, and sure enough, it was still there, and it was still very scary, because it was like nothing I'd felt before. And it just felt ominous. I mean, it just didn't feel right. So we made an appointment, and, after several doctor's visits, it was confirmed that I had stage 2B breast cancer. And so here we are, only a few months to our wedding. And now I'm kind of in a fight for my life, because it was HER2 positive. And at the time, that was the most aggressive, fastest growing type of breast cancer.
Wow.
Yeah. And just 6 months earlier, when I had my well women's exam, I was fine. There was nothing. So in 6 months, I was at a stage 2B cancer. And if I had waited much longer, it probably would have been a very different outcome.
So if you don't mind taking just a second to explain a little bit about the stages or how they work. I don't know a whole
Yeah,
lot about it, and I'm sure we have a lot of listeners that don't really know either.
sure. So stage 1 is usually it's very local. You have like the one spot in your breast. I can only speak from terms of breast cancer.
Of course.
So you just have the one spot. It usually can be treated with like a lumpectomy. Stage 2 is or 2A is, I think, where there's more than one spot in the breast. And stage 2B is where it has gone to the lymph node.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
yeah, so it was in my lymph nodes as well as my breast. And the breast was riddled. There were like 12 spots in my breast that were cancerous, and then the lymph nodes. And then I think stage 3 is when it has spread to other parts of the body. And then stage 4 is the what's it called? Metastatic
Okay.
cancer. It's like, usually that's not a very good
Outcome.
there's not a very good prognosis for
Right.
stage 4. So so I was at stage 2B. So it was in my lymph nodes, which is the stage right before it starts to go to the other parts of your body.
Right.
Yes.
So let me ask you this. You said your breast was riddled with it. Was it
Hmm.
both breasts or just one?
It was just one. It was the
Okay.
left breast.
Okay.
It was the left one. Thank goodness. Because going through it on one side was hard enough, but I've met women that have had to have, both breasts removed, and I can't even imagine.
Man.
Yeah. So there was that. And, we fought most of the 2016 year. I, we, I felt like we were fear mongered into doing chemo.
Mm-hmm.
And so we started chemo, and I was supposed to have 6 rounds of a very aggressive chemo. My infusions would last anywhere from 4 to 6 hours.
Wow.
And, but I only made it through 3.
So
Go ahead.
how often did you have to do the treatments?
It was every 3 weeks.
Every 3 weeks. Okay.
Yeah.
And
It
how
was
did they
really,
make
really
you?
strong.
Okay. And how did they make you feel?
Well, chemo's progressive. So after the first round, I was fine. For the most part. What hurt the most the first round, so the day after you take chemo, they give you something called a Neulasta shot. And this is to boost white blood cell production, so that you don't get sick.
Okay.
But our white blood cells are created in our bone marrow, like in our bones. So the Neulasta shot causes extreme bone pain.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, and bone pain, you think, you hear them say it's going to cause bone pain, and you're like, okay, but there's no way to prepare you for what that really entails. Because you think, oh, I can lay down, but nothing you do helps. Like
Right.
nothing you do helps bone pain. And I felt it the most in like my low back, my hips, and my legs. So like my skull didn't hurt and my arms didn't hurt as much, but my back, my hips, and my legs would hurt. And my mom, God bless her, she would try anything, like try rubbing me, but I didn't want to be touched.
Mm-hmm.
And that type of pain, it lasted for probably 24 to 48 hours.
My gosh.
So that first round was fine except for that. And then the second round, right before the second round, all of my hair fell out.
Oh.
And so that was more of a psychological blow than a
Mm-hmm.
physical blow. So I went into my second round of chemo already kind of deflated because my hair had fallen out.
Right.
And go ahead.
And through this process, you have learned, I'm sure, that your mindset totally matters when you're trying to go through something like this, right? So
Absolutely.
if you're already going into the second one, and like you said, feeling deflated and kind of defeated already, it's already a recipe for disaster.
Exactly. And I learned very quickly because I felt, of course, I felt worse because now this is the second round. It's cumulative. So it's now starting to take an effect on my body. The chemo is starting to affect my body.
Mm-hmm.
And like, that's when I started to get like, my gums hurt. So I couldn't really chew anything. And I started to get the heartburn and just really fatigue. I was really, really fatigued. And then the next day I have to get the Neulasta shot again. This time though, I told them that the first time was too strong, and I couldn't. And my mom was there with me, I believe, for that second one. And she even was like, no, we're not giving her the shot. And so they agreed. They said that I could take the shot. They gave it to me so I didn't have to come back. And
Mm-hmm.
my sister-in-law gave it to me, but we only had her give me half. And that still was too much. Like
Oh
it
my.
was so bad and it was worse the second time because my body wasn't as strong as it was after,
The first.
after the first one. Mm-hmm.
Right.
And then the third one, that's when I felt like I was dying. At this point, I've lost 35 pounds. And I didn't have 35 pounds to lose.
Right. I was going to say, man, I can't imagine you losing 35 pounds. There's just no way.
Right. No. And it was mostly muscle mass because I wasn't doing much. I would walk, Nick would take me walking, but walking to the stop sign at the end of the street and back I would feel like I had ran 4 or 5 miles.
Man.
Like it just completely wiped me, and my breathing was labored. So sitting and holding a conversation, I would start to breathe heavy. And so I couldn't talk very long. So at this point, Nick was my mouthpiece. He handled everything with family and friends because I just couldn't all of my energy was focused on not dying.
Right.
And after that, after the Neulasta shot, when that pain kicked in, I was sleeping on the couch at this point because the chemical heartburn was insane and I couldn't lay down flat. And I didn't want to keep Nick up because he's taking care of me. He was still working. And I don't even know like the stress of having to care for a partner that has cancer, but I imagine that it was hard, you know?
Yeah, totally.
And so I told him, babe, I don't think I'm going to wake up. My body was so acidic and I was so tired. Like, honestly, it would have been a relief to not wake up to what I was having to face at the time.
You can't see me, but I'm shaking my head like, holy cow, I can't even fathom having to feel like I would rather just not wake up and have to deal with feeling like this.
Yeah.
I just can't even imagine.
It was emotional too, because like I love life. I love my life. And in that moment, I was ready to like be okay with not waking up.
Wow.
And so I told him, and he said, well, if you wake up in the morning, can we quit chemo and look for an alternative treatment? And I was like, yes, if I wake up, we can quit. So I woke up and we quit. And we found a naturopathic doctor and we started looking up different things and trying to like move the chemo out of my system a little bit quicker. And we did a scan and all of the cancer was gone except for like one spot. So it was decided that I would use naturopathic medicine to hold that at bay, and they scheduled me for surgery to remove the rest of it. So I had to have a full mastectomy on the left side.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, when you decided that you were done,
Mm-hmm.
and like, did you have a talk with your doctors or like, how did that go?
Um, well, Nick went with me and we told my oncologist that we didn't want to do anymore. Of course, she tried to talk me out of it. But I knew that if I did any more chemo, it was going to kill me.
Right. Yeah.
I knew that. And so it's like, I would
What's the
rather
point?
right. What's the point? And I would rather have, if the cancer was going to kill me, I would rather have a few more lucid months or years or however long than to be sick up until the day that I die.
Right.
You know what
And
I
just
mean?
completely drained and just the
Yeah.
life literally sucked out of you.
Yes. And so, you know, it was not an easy conversation because I think it's her job. It was her job to ensure that I finished the treatment, but I also didn't agree with the way that the way that they prescribed the treatment, because I was like, well, why don't we check after every infusion to see if there's any more cancer left or is there progress? Like, why six rounds of this chemo? And the answer we got was, well, that's what we use for the average person. I was just like, well, that's kind of scary that,
Right. Like you just
you
have
know?
a little prescription pad and you're like, you have cancer. Here you go. You get six,
Yeah.
then you get six, then you get six. That's
Yeah.
ludicrous.
Yes. And so I was just like, well, people are so different and their lifestyles are different. And I felt like
Personalized plan.
yeah, it wasn't a treatment plan based off of who I am and how healthy or sick I was at the time. And it was more based off of what works for the median amount of people. And so that made it a lot easier to quit as well, because I was just like, I just knew I wouldn't
Yeah.
be here talking to you today if she were able to talk me out of it.
Wow.
And so no, she was fine. She wasn't fine, but they ended up supporting me in my decision. And the compromise we made was I was on like 4 medications: carboplatin, Taxotere, Herceptin, and Perjeta. So the agreement we made was that I would continue taking the Herceptin, which had the least amount of side effects,
Okay.
and discontinue the real toxic drugs.
So
And
what was the purpose of that drug specifically?
the Herceptin, if I'm remembering correctly, it was specifically to target the HER2 positive cells that I had. If I'm not mistaken, it was to
Okay.
prohibit the growth of the cancer that was still there.
Okay.
And it felt like that was the only way. Like if the doctor had been more supportive of me in wanting to quit totally, I would have, but she wasn't. And so it was almost like she wouldn't let me leave until I agreed to something
Right.
that she wanted. And so that's what we ended up doing. She wanted me to take it for like another 12 to 15 months, but I didn't. I took it up to my last surgery. And then
Okay.
which was just like not my last surgery, but the major surgery where they did the mastectomy. I
Mhm.
took it up to then, and then I stopped.
Okay.
I just kind of had to meditate on it and pray about it and do what I thought was best for my body. And I just didn't want some of those uh, long-term side effects.
Right. So I love this story so much because you really took the bull by the horns and decided I have to be my own health advocate just because, they are doctors and they do this all day, every day doesn't mean that they, like you said, have a personalized plan for you or a personal interest in. I mean, I'm sure that they do have an interest in your health and wanting to get you better, but at the end of the day, you know you better than anybody else. So I
Mhm.
love that you just really um uh, listened to your body and your mind to figure out what was best for you. I love that about the story.
Yeah, I just can't see it any other way. We were taught to take up, defend yourselves and speak up for yourselves and for other people. And so um, I knew that I had to. Plus, I made the agreement with my husband. If you make it, if you wake up, then this is what we're going to do, because
Absolutely.
no one should ever feel like they're not going to make it through the night.
For sure. And no one should ever feel like they're not in control of what's happening to them. So,
Exactly.
yeah, I just love that. So,
Yeah.
once you decided to go and um, see the naturopathic doctors and start working on that, what was kind of the treatment that you and they worked out together to um, in the most natural way to get you through this?
Well, it was a lot. I mean, most of it I can't remember, but I had a spreadsheet that had like 30 lines on it of the things that I were to do every day.
Wow.
Um, People like, sometimes natural medicine is romanticized on social media. And sometimes it's like a quackery, but it works. It takes a next level commitment for it to work. You have to be 100% all the way in, committed to the treatment plan, because it includes diet. I
Mhm.
had to cut out all sugar because sugar feeds cancer.
Right.
So I had to cut out sugar, cut out caffeine. And so people don't realize that cutting out sugar also means cutting out a lot of natural sources of sugar as well.
Right.
And who doesn't like sweet stuff? I
Right.
love
Who
sweet
doesn't like
stuff.
berries and bananas and things like that? That's so hard. I can't even imagine.
Yeah. And now I could have some berries. So like strawberries. Berries actually have the lowest content of sugar in nature.
Oh, awesome.
And so some berries I could have, but no bananas, no mangoes, no pineapples, no apples, all of those things, cut out. And then I was taking a bunch of like homeopathic medicines, and then I was doing things to help my body flush out the chemo. So we were doing castor oil packs and hydrotherapy and dry brushing. Like, I mean, it was so much. And it was almost like I had a job because we had this spreadsheet. We put everything in our phones so the alarms would go off because it was way too much to remember. And I had a severe case of chemo brain. Like chemo stole things from me, memories. Like, my daughter's like, Mommy, you don't remember? We did this. So Erilyn and I read the Chronicles of Narnia, the magician's nephew.
Mm-hmm.
And we brought the book back to Costa Rica, and I was like, great, we can finally start to read this. And she's like, Mommy, we read the first book already. And I was like, no, we didn't. She's like, Mommy, yes, we did. I can't believe you don't remember. I have no recollection of reading that book to her. And this is something that we apparently did every night at bedtime. I would read her because at the time she was too young to, read a C.S. Lewis book. So I was reading it to her, and I have zero recollection of that. And so there's other instances where I have no recollection of events that have happened. I see pictures, sometimes even video of me in these places, but they're not real to me because those memories are completely gone. But that's
so heartbreaking.
Yeah. It's gotten better though. Like my short-term memory is kind of returned. So I'm doing better because I used to be kind of like a mental powerhouse. I could remember all types of numbers. I was a data analyst, so I worked with numbers. So that's coming back. But the memories that I lost, they're like forever gone. I think I don't know that I'll ever, gain those memories back.
Oh man. Okay, so you guys were doing all of these things.
Yes.
And like how often were you getting checked to see kind of where you were standing?
Not often. Like they did it once before when I said I was quitting, and then one more time before the surgery.
Okay.
And before the surgery, I was completely cancer-free.
Wow, that's amazing and awesome.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
while you were doing all of this stuff, were there, I know you said like dry brushing and hydrotherapy and all these things. What were you doing to keep your mind and your spirit in the right place?
Yoga.
Awesome.
Yoga and meditation. I was still pretty weak physically, but Nick would try to get me to walk at least once a day. And it was just to the stop sign and back. And we lived pretty close to the stop sign, but that's just how bad my physical situation had gotten. And I would sit outside a lot. I think people don't realize the power of nature. I had a patio, and before I was diagnosed, I was on a mission. It was almost like some part of me knew that this was coming, but I turned this patio into like my own little personal jungle. I had a couple of trees out there, tomato plants and turmeric and ginger, and I had, what is it called? The Wandering Jew hanging up, and I had the Malabar spinach. That's a climbing spinach, and it was wrapping around like the post. And so it was just this very green, serene place. And I sat there most of the time. Like most of the time I was outside on the patio, because that was just like, it was so comforting for me. Those plants provided me with so much care. And I'm not completely sure how. And so it's no wonder that I ended up living in the jungle surrounded by plants and trees and nature. But it was
So
really, really, really good.
yeah, no, I think that, like you said, you knew in some sort of way that you were approaching something big.
Mm-hmm.
And so making that space for you, and like you said, we don't realize a lot of times how being in nature can really ground us. I actually heard about grounding recently, and I
Mm-hmm.
never really understood what that was about or anything like that. But my husband and I planted a little garden right outside our house, and it's a great thing to just be out there and to be able to get dirty and see the fruits of my labor and things like that. So that's really helping me learn what grounding is and how to get to that place. So what led to the decision for you guys to say we're leaving this town and we're headed to Costa Rica? How did you guys get to that point?
So So all this happened in 2016. At the end of 2016, I had the mastectomy. And then the next year in July, end of July, beginning of August, I had the last, like the reconstruction surgery, and they pulled my latissimus dorsi around the front, a piece of it. So I had like 38 stitches in my back and these drainage tubes coming out of my side, and Hurricane Harvey hit.
Oh my word.
Yeah. So Hurricane Harvey hits, and we were trying to decide whether we were going to stay or go. Erilyn was already gone. She was with my grandmother and my aunt. She goes with them every year to like our family reunion. And it just worked out perfectly because we sent her, so knowing that I was going to have surgery, we scheduled it so she wouldn't be here. And we were like, well, what should we do? We were supposed to go and get her and bring her back. But my aunt said, why don't you just wait until the storm passes and then come get her? Well, we ended up deciding to leave and evacuate because Nick made a great point. If for whatever reason we have to get into water, like if we had to leave our home for whatever reason,
Right.
I would have died because I had 38 stitches in my back.
Oh my word.
And we now know that there was all types of stuff in the water that people had to wade through, people who left their homes. Now, our place did flood, and we ended up losing our condo, and about 35 to 40% of our furniture. Before we left, we did have the privilege of moving stuff. So the second floor gym of our condo, like the condo, the place, they said we could put stuff in there. So we carried some stuff up there, and then Erilyn had bunk beds. So we put like super important stuff on her top bunk and then the rest on her bottom bunk. And we just counters, we put everything up. So we actually lost a lot less than we would have had we just left and not prepared.
Right.
And we lost our home. We end up in a garage apartment. And as we're looking for houses, the housing market was crazy then.
Yes.
And you almost had to put an offer on a house without even seeing it. Every time we would get ready to go see an apartment, or not an apartment, a house that was in our range, in the area that we wanted, our realtor would call back and be like, sorry, someone bought that house. It's just like, it was just listed.
Wow.
And so after the third one, Nick was like, well, maybe we're looking at this wrong. This might be an opportunity. Prior to me getting sick, we had planned to take a year sabbatical. We were going to take Erilyn out of school for a year and homeschool her and just travel for a year. We had planned it out. We already had the Airbnb set up. We knew what countries and cities we were going to be in over the full year. Well, of course, we had to cancel that once I got sick. And so he was like, this might be the opportunity, but instead of it being for a year, let's just go. We have nothing holding us here. And so we're like, okay, well, where are we going to go? And we made a list. The first list had 12 countries on it. And then we started looking at like the cost of living in the countries, the education, healthcare, all of that. And the only place that was in the top 3 on the list was Costa Rica because we'd been here.
Right.
And we got married here. We got married like in between chemo and my surgery.
That's crazy.
Yeah, because the doctors, even my boss, people were like, cancer's taken so much from you. Don't let it dictate this. Do not change your wedding date. Go through with it. And I'm so glad we did. But yeah, so we got married here and we honeymooned here. So we spent a total of like 2.5 to 3 weeks in Costa Rica, and we traveled all over the country, and we absolutely loved it. So it made it really easy to choose it coming back.
It was destiny. It was destiny.
Yeah, I feel like that for sure, especially now that we're here and where we live and our neighbors. It's like I said, it's like I came home.
Yeah.
I'm so much more at peace. I'm not stressed out about things. Even in the people here, like they're just very different. It's not everyone for themselves. It's always a community It's always a group effort for whatever it is. If you break down on the side of the road, many people, person after person after person, will stop to make sure that you get what you need or call who you need and get to where you need to get to.
Yeah, I love that. That's so powerful to be a part of a community that's like that and that looks out for each other. I love that.
Yeah. And our neighbors, we got here and they made sure they already knew that transitioning from the United States, and not just anywhere in the United States, we transitioned from Houston, which is the fourth largest city in
Yeah.
the United States. So we're city slickers. And now we're on the side of a mountain on several acres of land where, you know, water might stop and you don't call a water company because the well's right up, right up the hill from your house. You got to go to the well yourself and check it out and see what the problem may be and then get someone to come and fix it if necessary.
Wow.
It's
Okay,
it's just different living.
that's awesome. So, okay, so you guys were like, all right, let's think about this different. Let's think about Costa Rica. And then so you made the decision.
Hmm.
How did you decide how you were going to do it? So I know that you guys have Costa Rica Unplugged,
Hmm.
and that's your yoga retreat business, correct?
Yes.
So how did you decide what what property to acquire, and like how did that all kind of come together?
So I always wanted to be a yoga instructor. And again, the session that I was going to get my certification is when I found out I was sick. So I had to put that off as well.
Hmm.
Um, but I was just trying to think of what I could give the world. And the thing that helped me the most when I was sick was yoga. And Big Power Yoga, God bless them, their way to support me was to allow me to come to yoga classes when I could. And one of the teachers actually let me record his class. I brought, because you normally don't bring your phone in. I brought my phone in, I recorded his class because there were times after each infusion where I couldn't be around people because my immune system was so weak
Hmm.
and any illness could have killed me. And so I recorded his class and I would do his class at home by myself. And I love the practice and I love the peace that it gave me. So I was like, what better can I give the world than this gift? And so we figured, okay, how can we help people? And we can bring people here because, I honestly think that a combination of stress and improper grieving and all of these things, not having tools to manage the chaos of living in a Western civilization led to me becoming sick. So I want to be able to offer those tools to people who are not fortunate enough to be able to just up and leave.
Right.
They're ingrained in their communities. So we decided on Unplugged, like we'll call it Unplugged, and people come here to unplug. Um, we were thinking of getting land in the mountains, but
Okay.
then we started renting here on the coast, and we fell in love with this community. And I realized how healing being next to water is.
Yes.
So we decided that maybe our initial plan was kind of off. So now we are running Unplugged off of the coast and then on the Nicoya Peninsula. And we've teamed up with a company called Zen Spirit Yoga Resort. And so
Okay.
I teach classes there, and we host our retreats there.
Fantastic.
Um, and then I try to do community events as well. International Yoga Day is coming up. So we're going to plan a free event for the community, because even the people living in paradise also need ways to distress, and they need the tools also. So being able to do that for the community was important for us as well. And then we come back to the United States because not everybody can afford to go on a yoga retreat. So we try to plan tours to the United States where we travel and we go and we touch people and try to give them just a fraction of peace for an hour in a yoga class or 2 hours in a workshop. And the work has been extremely rewarding, like extremely rewarding.
That is so amazing. So this podcast, you guys, is about using your unique gifts and talents to serve the world. Has become my biggest passion. And I am so happy you came on to tell us your story and how something so horrible that you've had to endure really led you to your life's purpose.
Yeah.
It just,
And that I had to, and I'm grateful for it. Like, one of the things that I've learned living here is that by being in gratitude, even for the horrific things, it makes life that much easier to live. And so I'm, I wouldn't wish cancer on anyone, and not everyone comes out, the way that I did, but I'm grateful for the lessons that I learned and for realizing that I wasn't living. I was not spending the time that I needed to with my daughter or my husband. And this way I get to work for the world, and I get to be what I need to be for my daughter and my husband. And I couldn't ask for anything more than that.
for sure. And that's another great lesson, is that whatever you are meant to do, you can figure out a way to do it that serves not just other people, but also your own life.
Mm-hmm.
So often we get so caught up in, but the whole point of life is you go to school, and then you get a career, and you work for 40 years, and then you retire, and then shortly after that, you pass away or whatever. And so we're just conditioned that is the process of life, especially here in America. So
Mm-hmm.
to have to go through something so horrible and really realize, like, hey, this is not life, this is not what I want for my life or my family, and really take what's the word I'm looking for, take charge and take responsibility, and just really go out and live with audacity and do the things that you really wanted to do. Tell me about how other people reacted when you told them about going to Costa Rica.
So the reaction was, from on both ends of the spectrum and everything in between. Some people were extremely elated, like, oh, that sounds amazing. And then some people were like, but why?
Girl, yeah, girl, you're crazy. Why would you do that?
Yeah, why, um and though we were so convicted that it didn't matter what anybody said, we knew this is what we were going to do. Some people wanted to know, why don't you wait? But that's the trap that you fall into in a Western civilization. It's like, oh, I'm going to wait until I have this right, or I'm going to wait until I have this amount of money. And the thing is, living in the United States isn't cheap, and
Uh-uh.
living in Houston isn't cheap. And we had an opportunity. If we had stayed, we would have eventually gotten another home, which would have grounded us,
Right.
I'm saying, kind of anchored us into Houston.
Yes.
And I just knew that if we didn't go, then we wouldn't go at all, or not for a long time. And
Right.
Erilyn was, she was finishing up the third grade. So she was still pretty young. It's not like I was dragging a teenager to another country to start learning everything in another language. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Yeah.
And so yeah, the reactions were, they varied. Mostly though, they were positive. And some people were like, my aunt Shari, she was like, this is you guys though. She's like, I hate to see you go, but I can see how this is what you need for your life. And so that was, responses like that were extremely helpful. But my family was overall very, very supportive.
That is so amazing and awesome. So let me ask you real quick, how has Erilyn adjusted to living in Costa Rica? Does she just absolutely love it, I assume?
Yes, she absolutely loves it. And the only thing we were worried about was the education standpoint. When we left the States, she was on like a 5th grade math level and an 8th grade reading level. And when one of the teachers at the school she goes to is our neighbor. So before we enrolled her into school, she was telling us, she's like, the education's very basic, so, and I was like, that's fine. We still homeschool. So we are homeschooling her on a U.S. curriculum so that she can take whatever test she needs to get a U.S. high school diploma.
Okay.
And she can still like take the ACT, SAT, and apply for colleges in the United States if she so chooses.
Good.
Yeah, I told her, you can do whatever you want to do in the world. Like, I wouldn't live so audaciously and then limit what she can do.
Yeah. And not only that, but you're showing her that she can do whatever she wants in the world. You're living it right out in front of her. So you're giving her the best life lesson that you could ever give her.
Yeah. And so she loves it. And I think right now, even though some of the stuff, the math is on par to fourth grade math in the States, but everything else is a little bit more basic. And the challenge though for Erilyn, who needs a challenge in her education, is that she's having to learn it all in Spanish. Now, while we did speak Spanish before leaving, it was more socially. So now she's having to learn math and science and social studies and all of these things. She's having to learn it in another language, and that provides an added layer of difficulty, which she has embraced. I did ask her if she missed going to school in the States, and she shocked me. She said she never ever wants to go to school in the United States again.
Oh my gosh, that's so great.
Yeah. And we were like, why? She goes, no, she says, while I feel I could be challenged more academically, yeah, she actually said that. She says, everyone's nicer. She said, she's like, no, the teachers don't yell at you. And she said on the first day of school, she fell. And she was mortified because she just knew she was going to end up with some cruel nickname.
Uh-huh.
And she's like, and then this girl came over and helped me up and dusted me off and asked if I was okay. And she was just completely blown away by that. And she's like, no one gets mad. She's like, we talk everything out. And
I love that.
Yeah, so for her, it has nothing to do with the academics. It's literally the culture and just the kindness that has her sold. And she loves going back to visit her friends. That's the thing. We try to make sure we connect with her friends, but she says that she prefers the school here.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, one of the problems in our Western culture is that everything is a competition. Everything is a competition. What do you have? Who do you know? What do you wear? Just literally everything is a competition. So when we bring kids up with that mentality that they always have to try to be the best, then of course they're automatically going to learn that to put down other people to bring themselves up, right, and make themselves feel like they're winning. So I am so glad to hear that she gets to be a part of a different culture and a different upbringing that teaches kindness and love, and it's not about competition, it's about community. I seriously love that. So okay, I am so glad that you came on to tell your story. I love this so much, and I hope that everyone gets a chance to listen to this because it's so good, so good. So let's do a little rapid fire now.
Okay.
So tell me about a book, article, person, or a talk, like a TED Talk or something like that, that changed your life.
I'm gonna have to go with the 4 Agreements.
Okay.
That was that changed the way that I think about things, and I try to make sure with every interaction that I am in agreement with all 4 agreements, and it makes me a much kinder and more compassionate person.
I love that so much. And I read like a brief synopsis of it, and I Googled what the 4 agreements were previously, but I haven't read the book yet. I promise it's on my list, so I'm totally going to move that closer to the top.
Yeah.
Tell me, what was your dream job as a kid?
I wanted to be a doctor.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, you kind of
I
are
wanted
a
to help.
doctor.
And because I wanted to help people. And so I do feel like I am living out my dream.
I love it.
Like I'm doing what I said I wanted to do. I'm not necessarily healing people medically, but I'm helping people heal themselves from emotional and mental trauma.
I just love that so much. Oh my gosh, this is such a good episode. Okay, so what is your best advice to help our listeners live with audacity?
To not care what anyone else thinks, and don't let people project their stuff onto you. That's theirs.
Yes.
And when you do that and you start like being really authentic with yourself and your wants and your needs, then that's the best way to move forward.
I love that. Yeah. No, you, and it's funny, like we've talked so much about the Western culture, in our culture, and I struggle with this a lot, is being so, overwhelmed with, technology and being busy all the time and things like that. And a lot of times we don't get the opportunity, or we don't give ourselves the opportunity to just be quiet and really listen to our own hearts and our own minds. We're constantly inundated with all this information from the outside world to kind of tell us what we are supposed to be doing. But when we can take some time to really dig deep and figure out what it is we actually want, it's so much easier to live with audacity, because once you hit that point where you're like, wait a minute, no, this is what I really want, then you become so committed to it, and you're like, I'm going to do whatever I can do to make sure I get to do that. So I love it. Okay, so where can people find you to get more information about Unplugged and about you guys?
So we're on Facebook and Instagram. The handle on both of those is at Unplugged CR.
Okay.
UNPLUGGED CR. And from there, there's links to our website, and we're actually hosting a gratitude retreat in November leading up to Thanksgiving. I think it ends the day before Thanksgiving, so everyone will be home for Thanksgiving. But we wanted to do a gratitude retreat because being in gratitude is the first step to really healing yourself in any way, shape, or form. And so I'm hoping that it's going to be full and excited, but we're planning it for a small group so that we can maintain intimacy.
Awesome. That's awesome. Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I sincerely appreciate it. And I think this is going to be a great episode and people are going to love it.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. And it was really good to talk this out with you. I've never talked it out in this fashion before.
Oh, so cool. Yeah, no, I know little bits and pieces of your story, but it was really nice to be able to hear it from beginning to end. And I'm just so grateful that you came on.
Awesome. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you. So you may have noticed that I ask each of my guests to tell me about a podcast or a book or a talk or a blog or something like that it's made a big impact on their lives. I do this because there are several of those that have made major changes in my own life and where it's headed, and I love getting to know what did it for them. To that end, I am launching a book club. I am so excited about this because I know all of these books have made huge impacts on tons of people's lives, and I can't wait to share them with you. We're going to read a book a month starting on October 1st, and if you want all the details, just go to mmstewartco.com/livewithaudacity. All the information will be sent out on September 17th, and that leaves you plenty of time to get the book and get ready. Again, that is mmstewartco.com/livewithaudacity. Did you love this episode of the Live with Audacity podcast as much as I did? I know you did. So if that's true, please head on over to iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts, subscribe, leave me a review. Please let me know how I'm doing, and I hope to see you next week. Bye.